no more.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu suggests that an end to the war in Gaza could be within reach. Israeli police detailed the process of identifying the body of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar after his assassination in Gaza. And the Israeli occupation forces continue their military operations in Lebanon. It's exactly 4 p.m. here in Cairo, and you're now watching Q News. Let's start our bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has suggested that an end to the war in Gaza could be within reach. Following Israel's confirmation of the assassination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, Netanyahu stated that Sinwar's death, along with that of other leaders from Hamas and Hezbollah, may open the door to the peace in the Middle East. Israeli police have detailed the process of identifying the body of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, assassinated by Israeli occupation forces in the Gaza Strip. Assistant Commissioner, a commander of the police forensic unit, has stated in a video that after the army provided photos of Sinwar's teeth and body samples, police, dentists, and Israel's Institute of Forensic Medicine compared these to Sinwar's information in the database. Sinwar has spent over 2 decades in an Israeli prison, undergoing several medical procedures, some of which were described as life-saving by the doctors who performed them. U.S. President Joe Biden has stated that it is time to move forward following the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar in Gaza. Biden mentioned that he congratulated the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sinwar's killing, adding that the war should now end and the detainees held in Gaza should be returned home. The U.S. military has affirmed that its forces were not involved in the Israeli operation that assassinated Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. However, Pentagon spokesperson Air Force Major General Patrick Ryder stated that the United States intelligence had aided Israel in identifying the Hamas leaders involved in the abduction of detainees last year.
Defense battery represents the United States' unwavering.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has called the Israelis' assassination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar a step toward progress. Speaking in Wisconsin, Harris stated justice has been served and emphasized that this moment offers the United States an opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza. She added it is time for the day after to begin.
Hostages killed in Gaza. He had American blood on his hands. Today, I can only...
French President Emmanuel Macron has called the assassination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar a turning point. Speaking at a press conference following an EU summit in Brussels, Macron urged that this moment is to be used to free all detainees and bring the war to an end.
Il faut en effet mettre fin aux opérations militaires. Désormais,
China has also joined the global call for peace in Gaza, emphasizing the urgent need for a ceasefire following Israel's assassination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. During a news conference, ministry spokesperson stated that China's top priority is to fully implement relevant UN Security Council resolution, achieve an immediate ceasefire, protect civilians, ensure humanitarian assistance, and prevent further escalation of conflicts. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stated that the assassination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar significantly weakens Hamas. After attending a summit for EU leaders in Brussels, he noted that the round-table discussion focused on conditions for a durable peace leading to a two-way state solution. She emphasized that lasting peace can only be achieved with a stable, strong, and reformed Palestinian Authority.
In particular, one very important point. This lasting peace and a two-state solution can only be achieved with a
State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller has announced that the United States intends to advocate for a ceasefire and the release of detainees following the assassination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. During a press briefing, Miller remarked that with Sinwar no longer in the equation, Washington sees a potential opportunity to end the conflict. He reiterated Israel's right to confront Hamas and exert pressure for the release of detainees, while stressing the importance of pursuing a political solution in Gaza.
We've been trying to achieve a ceasefire that returns the hostages home, alleviates the suffering of the Palestinians.
And for more analysis on the situation, we now move to Salma in our newsroom. Salma?
Thank you, Rana. For further analysis on the situation, we're joined from Cairo by Dr. Osama Raslan, the linguist and political commentator. Dr. Raslan, welcome to Q News. We're glad to have you with us to know your inputs on the matter. First off, thank you for joining us, sir. First off, what do you make of the Sinwar assassination?
Well, according to Israeli official sources, the assassination was a mere coincidence. It was an unplanned operation. From available videos, statements, and analyses, the assassination involved an immeasurable amount of shillings and military resources that have been committed to see the assassination through, which is a typical Israeli behavior. I mean, it pays much less attention to potential civilian damage than it does to its targets. So this is a typical and persistent Israeli violation of international law in all its aggressions. That indiscriminate targeting was coupled with the mutilation of Sinwar's body, as we have seen in those videos. Although a single hair of the man's head was good enough to make a positive DNA match, but the occupation forces mutilated the body by disproportionate targeting and taking big samples of the corpus, I'm sorry to say this, but only to take the whole body after that. So what was the point? What is equally striking in all that is how proven propagandists and disinformationists the Israelis are. They said Sinwar uses civilians and captives as human shields, which is now known to be untrue. They also said that Sinwar was hiding in tunnels, which has been found untrue as well. They used to brag about their intelligence superiority and hegemony, but this very assassination reflects the failure by Israeli intelligence services to get to a man who used to be their prisoner for about 22 years. So they know everything about him. And they also failed to even get to their captives in Gaza.
Sir, we're currently witnessing a global call for peace and to end the war in Gaza from countries like, of course, the United States, China, and France. Will the assassination affect military operations in Gaza?
Well, I don't think so. Statements by Israeli political and military officials since yesterday reveal how persistent they are to continue their genocidal effort in Gaza. What should we all remember is that the goal of what might be called de-Hamasification of Gaza, removal of Hamas from Gaza, might be attainable on the political and military levels, but never on an ideological level. Besides, Hamas is not the only resistant Palestinian faction. All other factions, be they leftist, rightist, liberals, socialists, you name it, they are all for resistance through different means. All of them want to end the occupation. All of them want a Palestinian independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital. And now who is fighting against Israeli occupation in the West Bank? Hamas? No. Other factions do. So the Palestinian cause cannot and must not be limited to a single faction and whether Israel is capable of destroying it. And now think about this. Israel has assassinated every Hamas leader since the inception of the organization in 1990s or so. I mean, since its inception in the 80s, but assassinated its all leaders since the 1990s. And where did that lead them?
Sorry for interrupting you, but I would like to shed light on the role of the United States, since it's now clearly advocating for talks for a ceasefire and the exchange of the hostages and detainees. Any thoughts on the fate of the Israeli captives?
Well, this is still unknown. What I do think is more Israeli captives in Gaza are going to lose their lives by Israeli fire in the first place. American calls are not, to my own estimations and analysis, they are not serious enough to bring an end to the hostilities being committed in Gaza.
Mm-hmm. Sir, on the other hand, we have Hezbollah, who has vowed to escalate the conflict due to the assassination of Yahya Sinwar. In light of this, what post-assassination scenarios would you anticipate?
Again, the Israeli official statements are all for continued war on all fronts. Since October 7th, Israel has been facing what can be termed a collective response or a multi-front response by what is known in the region as the resistance axis. Before that date, and more evidently after that, Israel adopts a strategy to reshape the Middle East according to what its Prime Minister Netanyahu said. This strategy involves several policies, and I'd like to highlight some of them in a quick notion. The first is localization. And by localization, I mean that since October 7th, Israel has been witnessing a collective effort against it. What Israel is trying to do is to localize those fronts and sever any connections between them. The second policy adopted by Israel in this regard is elimination. And by that, I mean Israel is seeking to eliminate the heads of actors involved. So far, this policy has worked with Hamas and Hezbollah, which means it might be expected to be further extended to other regional actors, whether they're state or non-state. One other policy, or the third policy, is Israel's effort to re-engineer certain territories in the region, basically and most notably Gaza. They seek to introduce irreversible changes to the region in terms of geography, as we can see in Gaza, and in terms of political and demographic landscape, as we can see in Lebanon. For the very first time, we have seen the U.S. Air Force B-2 Spirit long-range stealth bombers are used to strike about 500 targets in Yemen.
Sir, sorry for interrupting you again, but I would like to know your intake on Netanyahu's statement when he said that now there's a chance for peace in the Middle East. Will he proceed in talks for a ceasefire and the exchange of hostages or detainees, or do you expect that he would face some kind of objection from his far-right government like Smotrich and Ben Gvir?
Well, actually, you provided the bottom line. For almost a year now, whenever an exchange deal or a peace deal is looming, the Israeli government would simply walk away from it. Why? Because they are too extremists to cut a deal or ensure the return of their own captives. Israel is not going to stop. The incumbent Israeli government is not going to stop its war on various fronts, and it is going to open new fronts according to what is available of information and data. They're going to open new fronts. Why? Because they are making good use of this watershed moment in U.S. politics, domestic politics.
That was Dr. Osama Raslan, the linguist and political commentator. Thank you so much for joining us on Q News and for your valuable insights. Now we're going to move back to Rana for more news and developments around the world. Back to you, Rana.
Thank you, Salman. We move on with the news bulletin, where the Palestinian death toll from ongoing Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip has reached over 42,430 people. Gaza's health authorities reported that in the past 24 hours, 29 people have been killed due to Israeli military actions. Additionally, the attacks wounded 93 others, bringing the total number of injuries to over 99,200 since the latest round of hostilities began in early October 2023. A recent United Nations assessment indicates that approximately 345,000 Palestinians in Gaza are expected to face catastrophic hunger this winter due to a decline in aid deliveries. The report from UN agencies and NGOs reveals a sharp rise from 133,000 individuals facing catastrophic food insecurity. It notes that September had the lowest commercial and humanitarian supplies entering Gaza since March. Estimates also project around 60,000 cases of acute malnutrition among children aged 6 months to 4 years during this period. Over 100 UN ambassadors have expressed support for the organization's Palestinian Refugee Agency, UNRWA, as it awaits approval of Israeli bills that would ban it from operating in Israeli territory. An Israeli parliamentary committee approved 2 bills to prohibit UNRWA's operations in Israel and severe government contact with the agency. The bills now await final approval from the Knesset. Ambassadors from Jordan, Kuwait and Palestine called the agency's work indispensable and a lifeline of hope amid the ongoing Middle East conflict.
To generations of Palestinian refugees through the provision of essential education,
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. الوضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Israeli occupation forces have continued military operations in Lebanon, with armed troops observed walking alongside tanks and entering buildings. Hezbollah vowed to escalate its conflict against Israel following the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Several Lebanese citizens have been killed and injured this morning following airstrikes by Israeli warplanes in multiple towns across Lebanon. Reports indicate that several civilians were killed in the town of Ansar, located in the south of the country, due to the bombings. As of last night, the Lebanese Ministry of Health announced that the total number of fatalities since the onset of the Israeli aggression has increased to 2,412, with injuries reported at 11,267. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller has affirmed the United States' commitment to pursuing a diplomatic solution to the conflict between Israel and Lebanon. Miller emphasized that the Lebanon conflict is separate from the Gaza conflict, highlighting the need for distinct peace efforts and the differences between Hezbollah and Hamas.
Continue to rain rockets down on Israel from just across the border. So it is
Funeral prayers have been held for victims of an Israeli airstrike that destroyed the municipal headquarters in Nabatea, southern Lebanon. According to Lebanese medical and military sources, 6 people, including the mayor, were killed and 43 others were injured in the attack on Wednesday. Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister Naguib Mikati condemned the airstrike, stating that it deliberately targeted a meeting of the municipal council addressing the city's service and relief situation. NATO defense ministers have gathered in Brussels for the second day of a 2-day meeting under new NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Defense ministers are set to task the new Secretary General to come up with proposals on how to modernize the entire standardization process. NATO is also working to get Ukraine closer to the alliance, its Secretary General Mark Rutte said. He added that it was essential for NATO to continue providing the country with military aid. Ukrainian officials have declared mandatory evacuation for people in Kupiansk. Ukraine's authorities ordered the evacuation of a key city and 3 other localities in northeastern Kharkiv region previously, as Russian forces press closer and officials face difficulties in providing services through the winter. The leaders of the European Union member states have failed to reach a new consensus on the Ukraine crisis due to sharp divides during Thursday's summit in Brussels. Ukrainian President Zelensky also attended the meeting and presented his strategy, which he refers to as his victory plan. He urged that there are only 2 paths to resolving the ongoing conflict with Russia: restoring Ukraine's nuclear deterrent or allowing Ukraine to join NATO unconditionally. Between these options, Ukraine prefers NATO membership. This brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here was what we have been covering. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu suggests that an end to the war in Gaza could be within reach. Israeli police detailed the process of identifying the body of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar after his assassination in Gaza. And the Israeli occupation forces continue their military operations in Lebanon. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow QNews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. For real-time updates, connect with us up on the UMS digital platform. Watch it as well. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more coming up here on QNews.